I'm Henry Kenyon, Senior Staff Writer with GovCIO Media and Research, and today we're going to be talking about modernizing legacy systems. With me are Kevin Walsh, Director of Information Technology and Cybersecurity at the Government Accountability Office, Justin Ubert, Director of Cyber Protection at the Department of Transportation, Mangala Kupa, Chief Information Officer and Chief AI Officer for the Department of Labor, and Amy Johannek, VP of Federal at Okta. So, thank you, everyone. And to get things started, I'd like to start with Kevin and for the group. What are some common hurdles and challenges that federal agencies face when modernizing legacy systems?
Sure, and thank you for having me here. So we're GAO. We have audits on just about everything. My apologies if you've been victimized by one. So we have done some work over the years on legacy systems, and we've done two in particular that I want to highlight. The first is GAO 19-471. The second is GAO 25-107-795, whatever. Google GAO legacy systems, and you'll get these reports. But what we did in those reports is we highlighted the most critical legacy systems in need of modernization. And as part of that, we flagged things that agencies both consider when deciding whether to modernize or not modernize, as well as the consequences of not modernizing. And those consequences, I think, is kind of what we're getting at. And the first one is vulnerabilities. And whether we're talking cyber vulnerabilities or physical vulnerabilities, the older systems don't have the defenses that we need. You heard Amy talking a little while ago, and she mentioned things built in COBOL. Those are absolutely still around, and it's not just one or two. These are endemic. COBOL, assembly, all of these old systems are really, really pervasive in the government. So cyber vulnerabilities are one. Staff shortages. You may not have the people around who can maintain it anymore. They may be retired or dead. We've seen many instances where people get hired back as rehired annuitants just because they're the only ones who know how the black box works. You may also have unmet mission needs. We heard, again, Amy talking about all the various ways that these systems, as they age, they don't grow with us. We don't keep on investing in these systems as they get older, and so they're not cutting the mustard anymore. And finally, increased costs. All those things add up to spending money. So that's kind of where we get to if you're talking what are the consequences of not modernizing. It is a very fascinating discussion, though, in terms of, okay, we have a limited and a finite amount of money. Where do we put those scarce funds? Okay, this system's in COBOL. It's 50 years old. But if it's humming along, working fine, and we've got it protected, I'm going to spend money on a more critical aspect of our operations rather than if it ain't fixed, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of methodology. So,
Justin?
So I think it's nice to be sitting next to Kevin rather than across from him. I think, in many ways, Kevin tagged most of the things I was going to say. O&M, right? O&M is, I think, about 80%, maybe you got better numbers, about 80% of agency spend. And so that, that means that we have less than 20% for DME because, just by nature, you're not going to get the full 20, right? So actually modernizing systems, we got a less than 20% of the agency spend across the government. That's a huge sunk cost in terms of our systems that we're maintaining and operating for many of the same reasons Kevin just pointed out. We've built over time, they were built for purpose, and they're sticking, but we're just keeping them up. Kevin also kind of talked about, the fact that you may not have the staff, and I wanted to echo that with the skills. The critical skills to keep a lot of this, old systems and infrastructure up is fading. We are able to tackle some of that with, some of these modernization efforts in terms of AI coding and tooling. So I've seen some cool stuff, but it's really difficult to say I'm going to, refactor this entire, system and app or whatever it is from COBOL into some modern language architecture lifted and shifted into the cloud. I mean, it's really rough to think about doing that even with the modern tools we've got. But the skills themselves are fading, and they're not everybody has them, right? We're shifting right now in DOT from a more management style of operating to a hands-on from a Fed perspective. So we're actively building those skills, but it's tough. The last thing is again, Kevin kind of pointed it out, which is the hybrid risk, the Frankenstein, if you will. None of this modernization happens immediately. It happens over time, which means that we have these layers and layers of bits and pieces of systems that interconnect or are on top of each other, and you get this really kind of ugly setup where it's difficult to get anything working correct, but for some reason it all works together, so you really don't want to mess with it. So it gets tough to touch any pieces of it, and you just kind of keep building on top of it. A long time ago, when I was in the Army, I worked on the CHCS. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's the underlying system for all the Army's medical records. I think it still exists, and we just could not get away from it. This is a database from the 70s, I think, and I think it still exists in some form as the underlying layer for all the Army medical systems, even with the modernization efforts. Now, I don't know if that's true today, but I recall it because I worked on it and with it, and it was so hard to get away from because it worked, and you could get everything you needed, but you had all these problems with the hybrid layers on top, and so modernizing that entire stack was really difficult because of drilling down through all the things that have been done over the years to make it all keep working. So those are all the difficulties.
And as a cyber guy, how do you make sure all those layers are defended and appropriately secured? And, oh, geez, we don't know how this one works. We can see the connections, but...
Yeah, a lot of it is, we're going to get to this a little bit later, I think, but a lot of it is anytime we start looking at modernization and trying to peel back layers, the first thing I want to do is get better signals. I want to dive in. I want to map dependencies, workflows through observability. And by leveraging that, it's a security function, but it's really an everybody function, right? When we do that, we can see what's going on, and then we can see what breaks if and when we start moving something. But I think the big thing is we get to map out those dependencies and start figuring out how to refactor. So observability is the first real big step for me.
And then again, you have systems that have zero permissible downtime. DOT, you have FAA. How much air traffic control downtime do you guys want in your flights?
None. And the FAA is going under, they have a modernization effort right now, right?
A brand new air traffic control system.
Big one, right? So I think that actually neatly encapsulates the problems. It is years and years of things that worked, but we didn't want to mess with them because they worked, and we can't have that downtime, right?
For context, some of these systems we're talking about were operational when JFK was the president.
Yeah, it's a long time. So there's, the FAA and the Secretary have committed to, modernizing those systems, and there's a lot of great efforts happening right now on that, but it encapsulates the problem neatly. How are we going to transfer over? How are we going to secure? And this is also another problem with the IT-OT gap, which I don't want to get into too much, but there's a ton of problems, right? So the biggest thing is just moving forward and trying to decompose, ensure visibility, and then map out those dependencies and work it. So.
Mangala?
It's working, looks like. So I agree with my colleagues here. But I think we need to think of legacy modernization completely a paradigm shift, because we are not living through the same times anymore. The technology that is available to us today can be used to combat some of the historic problems we have had with legacy. No documentation, nobody knows. The data is probably, I would say, fixed outside the system more than inside the system. I always say, having modernized major legacy systems in the last 6 years, probably over 24, data always gets you start early with your data migration because your new system is not going to like your old data, and you can't do it in the last minute. But I think there is an opportunity here, I think. We need to shift our minds to continuous modernization paradigm. We need to redefine operations and maintenance as lights only and preventive maintenance, cyber first. We need to use technology like AI. It's a great use of the technology to reverse engineer, to document the heck out of your old systems. Still, your challenges of trying to not do a big bang approach. Modernization is important, I think. That's a continuous advocacy. Figure out how to split it. Build bridges. The best modernization that I've seen is when you can't have a downtime with the legacy system. You start building the new footprint and slowly move component by component. And of course, it needs some planning, what components make sense, but then you start building bridges. So the new component comes online, and the data bridge goes both left and right. And the new component becomes operational, and over the time, you basically get rid of the old footprint. But the point I want to make is that at the crux of the issue, why are we in this kind of legacy modernization such a huge problem? If you peel the onion, in my opinion, it's a prioritization problem. It's like you're trying to remodel your home. Nobody wants to spend money fixing foundation. Everybody wants the new feature, and that's what happens with our operations and maintenance. The IT folks will say, well, I got to fix this, and the business would say, but I need this feature. I have this regulation to implement. So it's a prioritization issue. So the prioritization at two levels, right? One level is, do you modernize every single system? You have to prioritize and figure out. And we actually developed a methodology that helps us go through our list of systems, and constantly on a weighted scale, we pick up the highest weighted system. Maybe it's the system that's providing high impact services to public or things like that. Our technology is more than 15 years outdated. There's parameters we built in, and we built this methodology which helps us a lot in prioritizing which systems you can attempt to do. But then even within that, there is a further level of prioritization, I think. I think the thought I want to leave with on this topic is we have a unique opportunity to use technology to combat some of the traditional historic issues. But once you stop the bleeding, if you ever get to it, by the time you build something within a year, it will become legacy. That's where the world is heading. So you need to change the paradigm here and think of continuous modernization. Lights on, preventive maintenance, continuous modernization is where we need to be, and I think we can use technology to do that.
Amy?
Yeah, I agree. I think that you have to have a bias for action, right? I'm reflecting on a conversation I had with one of our customers who said, there's no perfect time to start, and if you sort of wait too long, you're letting perfect be the enemy of good, and then you're really delaying the mission outcomes that you're trying to do at each of these agencies. So I agree the consequence is not getting to your mission outcomes because you're sort of admiring the problem. So I would say, having a bias for action, having an approach, like you said, prioritization, you're going to reap the benefits.
And to follow on regarding modernization, Mangala, I'd like to ask you, how does the Labor Department transition to new systems, and how do you ensure that new technology works well with the department's current IT ecosystem?
I would say that as an IT department, we have gotten more things right than wrong. I'll try to be humble about it. First of all, we established an architecture group. And whenever we are undertaking a project, we do early homework to not just look at it from what should be the new architecture for the system, or is it a COTS product we are purchasing, whatever those decisions you're making, but also look at it in the context of how that system is part of the ecosystem. And what I have observed is that helps us. And making projects shovel-ready helps us. Just because you have resources and you want to modernize something, if your requirements are not there, or if you don't have time from your programs, who have the main job of running the program, but also have to work with the developers to give requirements if you're going down the custom development path, or even COTS for that matter, you still need some level of engagement, then you end up wasting money in that modernization. So making shovel-ready is one approach I strongly recommend. As I mentioned, start with your data migration early. Every major legacy system, that no matter how much effort you put it into migrating your data, just before production, you still have those problems with the data because most of the legacy data is fixed outside the system, over the years together. So having that phased approach is important. Building the bridges works really well, starting early with the data, and also make some smart choices. Even advocating to the customers that you probably don't need all your data to go into your new system. Close your cases in the old system first and just start new cases in the new, and then build a data lake for reporting purposes. So those are some good techniques you can use. Don't do big bang, roll it out, phase it out, because there is also, don't ignore the people process part of it. You could build a beautiful rocket, but nobody is going to take the ride in it. It's useless. So the people part of it is how does the new system change your workflow? And try to get time from your have representation from every area within your programs who know the business. Different parts of business stakeholders have to be part of your modernization because again, how do you build a new system? You are simply not replicating something in a new technology. If that's what I need to do, I would just use AI to do that. But if you're actually re-engineering the business process, if you don't do that, you're missing an opportunity of investment that you're making. So you need time from your program folks to dedicate to that thought process of what new process would make sense. So again, the best outcomes we have seen when we make the project shovel ready, when we get the time we need, when we phase it out, we start early with data, we have solid, rigorous testing again. This is an area where technology can help. Regression testing, in Agile, test. That's why it works. If it's done well, you can automate all of that testing now. It's an easy way, responsible way to use technology. So if you do all these things, I think is how we're seeing successes. When we fail in one of these areas, it comes back to delays and things like that.
I want to jump in here because, as the auditor, I'm going to flag risks. But I like your building bridges analogy. We see, that's absolutely a very successful approach. The one thing I would caution against here, though, is when you have that new system set up at the same time as the old system, Spock, make sure that you actually do get that transition all the way over to the new system so that you can kill the old system. Because the last thing you want is to build a new system, start transitioning from the old system, and then, oh man, we can't quite get that last requirement done, or we just need that old system, just stick around a little bit longer, and then it never dies, and it's a zombie, and it's just sucking more of that 80% of O&M that we were talking about
That's a
earlier.
good point. We celebrate when the old system is decommissioned. So decommissioning old system is part of the plan, not leave it in the halfway. But it's also a resource issue, right? In the sense that when we undertake a major legacy, we are planning multi-year legacy in terms until the decommission, and then try to keep to the timeline to the best of your ability. But good point. Yeah, you have to get rid of the old system. Otherwise, you're riding in two boats, and that's not good.
I also liked your point on continuous modernization because, when it comes down to it, there is no federal definition of what is a legacy system, right? We all have this concept of, old archaic things, maybe Indiana Jones going into that dusty government warehouse at the end, just full of really old stuff. But legacy, according to Suzette Kent, a prior federal CIO, is a system that is no longer meeting its agency's needs. But the needs are constantly changing, and the technology is constantly changing too. So the only way you avoid the legacy trap is if you do what Mangla was saying, where you are not building and then stopping and then building and then stopping. You're continuing to build and evolve, and as you're building, you're not just focused on the current snapshot of what you need to do. You're focused going forward and having that future-focused, future-proof outlook to make sure that you're not going to get left in the dust.
Yeah. If you wait until the system is not serving the purpose, you're too late. I like this. In the COTS product, we say no more than one version behind. That's a simple rule, but it works. But I would say in this technology era, you have to say no more than 1 year after a new technology comes out. You just have to change it.
And regarding security and just challenges rolling over, Justin, what are some of the cybersecurity challenges or just issues regarding legacy system modernization?
So we'll kind of cue off of what was just discussed about that sort of hanging out system. When you've got these Frankenstein architectures, where you've got the slow transition and things aren't there. You have that hanging requirement. That's a real problem. We don't modernize overnight, and these things are phased. And when they're phased, it means we've got these architectures hanging out that introduce risks simply because of the way they work, right? So if we think of it from the perspective of like brand new cutting edge aviation technology being married to a back-end legacy database from the 70s, we have some real problems there. How do these things talk? How do we get the data from one to the other? How are we going to just get MFA involved, right, with this old system? So we've got to come up with this complex kind of middleware to allow the systems to talk to each other and collaborate and work. We've got to have identity wrappers so that we can, layer over this modernization. So these are real problems, having this like Frankenstein approach to modernization. So we have to make sure that we're transitioning, as we're transitioning these systems and we're working through this, we're doing our best to make sure that the modernization doesn't leave gaps in the background that we have no way to fill from a security perspective and leave us open. Another big area is our data. Mangala, you said most of your data is not even on your systems, right? That's, so when we start doing these transitions, we're like, we discover all of a sudden all this old data, unstructured, sitting there, people forgot about. And it's like, oh, wait, now we got to do something with this. So you got to make sure that as you're kind of walking through this modernization, that you're making sure you find all these bits that are hanging out. You got this technical debt we've kind of covered several times. You got this data now. The data itself is a security risk. Do you keep it? Do you get rid of it? If you get rid of it, are you doing it according to schedule? How much money is it going to cost you, O&M again, to house this data? So you have to make these trade-offs and figure out what to do with this. And yes, the old data is a security issue. And then the last one is, I kind of nodded to it before, but that identity and authentication gap. A lot of these old systems don't have any way to leverage modern IDPs and our authentication mechanisms. So we have to find ways to, again, we have to create these middleware wrappers and get these things to talk to each other. That works. It does. We can ensure that, but it does leave some gaps for that zero trust approach that we're supposed to have for all this, and it introduces complexity in a time when we're trying to ensure efficiency and this modernization. One of the things I like to do as a security professional is I like to point out that modernization is security. When everybody wants to do the cool thing, let's roll out the AI, let's get the new thing going, I go, awesome. But in order to do that, look over here. We got to get this thing fixed because that's where your data's at. This is where your capabilities or your requirements are sourced from. So we got to fix that database. We got to get modern identity protocols in place. We got to microsegment our network so that we can get you a just-in-time permission set for those cool tools. I sell modernization because I sell security from that perspective. So for me, modernization, I said this yesterday on a panel, modernization is security, is acceleration. So if we can think about it that way, we all win. And I end up being a champion as a security guy for modernizing the environment, which is hilarious to me.
You're going to like what I'm going to say about this. It's time to elevate your CISOs. It's really time. It's really time. In the government speak, CISO is the cyber professional leader, Chief Information Security Officer, because what happens in most organizations is cyber comes to the table a little bit later. Decisions are made, and then, pull cyber because you need an ATO or you need a compliance check. It is genuinely time you elevate CISO. I don't say anything I'm not doing. I have done that. So very early in the decision-making process, CISO should be in your strategic meetings. Every technology decision you're making, CISO should be part of that. They should be proactive. I literally told my CISO, I don't need a passive CISO, I need an active CISO. And this is genuinely time to elevate your CISOs, make them part of your decision-making process, because the threats with the newer technology that we're facing require that discipline. It's no more DevSecOps. It's Sec, and then you have DevOps underneath that.
Come hang out with you. No, that's fantastic. So I wanted to just just echo that a bit more. One of the biggest things that I've had to deal with over time, and one of the reasons why I'm such a modernization champion is exactly that. If I'm championing it, I get in the room early, and then I can integrate security as part of the process. We got to get away from bolt-on. We got to get away from and then we got to secure it. One of the reasons that security has been seen as a part, the party of no, is because we come in late and then we go, you can't do this for X, Y, Z regulatory or law, best practices for security. And this is a really tough thing to all of a sudden slow down that feature we need right then, that rollout, which just yesterday I was dealing with a fire on the same sort of thing. So get us in early because we'll help you shape your process, integrate security as a natural part of the process. And we all win. Anyway.
And to follow up on that, I want to ask Amy, since Okta is about security, how do you identify, how does identity management and zero trust mesh with legacy systems, and what challenges does that present when you're building up one of those?
Absolutely. So I was enjoying Justin's comments greatly, and I waited to jump in because I knew you were going to give my opportunity. So for those of you who don't know, Okta is a modern SaaS identity platform. Obviously, identity is the first pillar of zero trust, and it cuts across all the other pillars. We would submit, and it'll sound very obvious, that identity is one of the first steps you can take towards modernization. You can put an identity fabric across all of the applications to get three major benefits almost immediately: a better user experience, right? A better mission outcome for maybe the application that you're using, but most importantly, and Justin will agree, is better security. A lot of the legacy applications do not have modern security protocols. They are just not fit for purpose. And I think by modernizing the identity layer across the applications, you can get an immediate security lift. And what you want to do is find an identity solution that can bridge the old and the new, because it is very difficult. Like Mangala said, do not do a big bang, but you can have solutions like Okta that can interact with legacy systems and with modern systems at the same time, so that you can have that immediate impact, but also can pace it in the right phases. So we would submit that, identity is the layer that could be modernized first, even while you're working on modernizing the actual applications themselves.
That's such an important point. If you don't have foundational zero trust implemented already, you're late to the party. I'll give you one example of where it helps beyond modernization. We started off by saying we will educate people, do the right thing. Don't use AI tools out there. Use the ones we are providing. So, we tried that. We trusted. It didn't work so well. So we had the Zero Trust Foundation, so we could actually see how many times people are actually trying to get out the network and use. And so we were able to quickly, adapt blocking things. Again, responsibly. And of course, we want to promote innovation. But the point I'm making is that Zero Trust Foundation, that investment should have happened 2 years ago. Okay, so if you still an organization that hasn't happened, it's beyond time to have that. It's going to help with all of the future state you need to get to.
It'll also help as you're allowing that agentic AI access to your network.
I can't believe we didn't say AI until now. I was going to say it next. So, because I do want to introduce the concept of non-human identities, right? That's the new coworker is our agents, and I think that's another risk at not modernizing, that we're going to be left behind, and we really need to think about identity across both human and non-human identities and the risks that they present if you don't register and govern them and understand how they're actually working across your environment.
You didn't need that production database anyway.
No, it's interesting. I think maybe if we could open up for questions, if anybody has any questions out there.
We shocked them into silence.
I'll just yell. I'm Ed Cox with F5. Thank you for coming up there for being F5 customers. We appreciate your business. But we are primarily a security company, and what a couple of you said have really resonated in the sense of you have all mentioned tooling to get you to a modernization standpoint. How do you go about choosing the tools since there are AI companies sprouting up every day? There are these tried and true best of breed like Okta and F5 and others that have been around forever. How do you go about choosing that? That's the first question. And really just a quick second one is, what are you doing to shore up the defenses in advance of Q Day in respect to PQC? So tooling and PQC.
I can go first. So, no technology decision is made without analysis being done, period. You know, and the analysis includes your CTOs, your CISOs, the point I'm making, and your network. He talked about microsegmentation. You don't design networks anymore based on, oh, should it be inside the firewall or outside the firewall? Even within your firewall, you need to build microsegmentation is a good technique. So the way we choose is we do market research. We do give a good look at all the tools that are available. And then we build a criteria, and then we make the best decision possible. So no decision in the labor department, in IT department happens without due diligence. That's number one. I'm so glad you talked about PQC. Again, talking about we needed to invest PQC two years ago to be ahead of the game. We are finally, and of course, the budgets sometimes don't allow you to do everything you want to do, but finally we are investing in at least analyzing and identifying how much work you have to do. And so I would say that this year we'll make progress in that. And then next year actually start implementing PQC across the board. But that's also, for PQC, I would say this, when you're purchasing new solutions, make sure that your contracts already have the PQC language in there. That's important because that's stopping the bleeding. So don't purchase anything that's not PQC ready, right?
Quantum's an interesting topic just because the closest parallel, I think, personally, is maybe Y2K. The difference, though, is Y2K, we knew when D-Day was, right? We knew we have to get this done, and we were able to crunch and really, really work. Gio did tons of testimonies leading up to Y2K, and it was a big push across the government. It was a high-risk area. PQC is not the same, right? It's when's it going to come? We keep on seeing news, and we know the technology is incrementally advancing. Is it suddenly tomorrow going to take a massive leap forward and everybody's going to be left saying, oh no, here it comes? Or are we going to have that slow and steady investment as our budgets allow? It's playing with fire. I hope we get it done right.
Yeah. So answer question number one. I'm a big fan of generating our requirements internally, right? We do that analysis. And then I really like doing bake-offs, proof of value, proof of concepts, because then a couple things happen. We get feedback real time. We can see the use cases that we think we need, but they can be informed by the features and the value that we see within. So I learn from those, and so do my staff. So proof of value, proof of concept, bake-off type I really like that for tooling purposes. Again, sometimes I just get to hear and see things that I didn't know about, and it helps me conceptualize that. For PQC, DOT is, I'm the PQC lead for PQC, so that's, that was number one of the two requirements we have to have in the next few days, or next, by September, I think. The second one is an inventory, so we're conducting that inventory as we speak. And then I'm reaching across interagency. FAA had put out an RFI for PQC, working with Lori Sparks, the FAA CISO, on that. And then intra-agency, I've actually got a colleague over in GSA who runs the FICAM program and also is very interested in PQC, because I see identity and PQC being very tied together in the long run. And so we're exploring how to do this, not just solo, but shared across interagency, intra-agency perspective.
Amy, got any last things to say?
No, I think these guys covered it. They're the ones selecting the technologies, so just grateful, like this gentleman said, that some of our customers are up here, and we just want to continue to support the mission.
Great. Well, thank you folks very much. This was really interesting. I think we'll move on to our next panel.
All right.